Listen to what Scott Jennings said. Yes, by the way, 2 black females were on the panel. He might have picked the wrong time to say this. Here's Scott Jennings on CNN last night blaming DEI partially for why these fires took place. Have a listen to this.
The priorities, because also in California, you might have recall a news story from last year. There was some interest in the fire departments and the firefighters in California, and the interest was that there were too many white men who were firefighters, and we need to have a program in California to make sure we don't have enough white men as firefighters. So we have DEI, and yet I'm wondering now, if your house is burning down, how much do you care what color the firefighters are?
You can respond and then
No priority.
Okay. Why is he even bringing that up?
Okay, first of all, that is not a point well taken, because the DEI hires had nothing to do with trying to get white people on the fire department. That was a fairness doctrine that was inserted into the American public in order to get certain races to even have an availability to assault. I mean, a firefighter, they have a pension, they have great pay, they have days off. It's a great job. So what was happening was they're outnumbered. For instance, the black population is only about 10 or 11% of the population. Well, they're not going to get the greater majority of the jobs. So they created a fairness doctrine to try to get more. We could talk about whether or not that was the correct thing to do, but it had nothing to do with it. And Scott Jennings, by the way, if you don't mind me saying, is a total. He's ridiculous. He's a liar. And I've already texted and I've tweeted to CNN, because Abby Phillip, he's always on her show, she doesn't check him. She doesn't fact check him. They talk about sexual abuse, for instance, or fraud or felonies. And he goes, yeah, well, and that judge was out for him. And he doesn't want to talk about the 34 felonies. If you or I did what Trump did to overvalue properties, to get more money from the bank, we'd both be in jail.
Yeah, I agree with you, and everything. Most of what Scott Jennings says is total crap.
He does an enormous word salad that doesn't make sense.
What an embarrassment. DEI hires, I agree, had nothing to do with the fires that took place. And the far right is also claiming 2% budget cuts on firefighters that might have led to this. That is ridiculous. In fact, if you look at the budget cuts and where the pressure came from, it didn't come from Democrats. You could look this up. It actually came from Republicans. So they're blaming 2% budget cuts, which really have nothing to do with what's taking place here. They're blaming DEI hires, just like last week when they blamed Joe Biden's open borders and migrants for what took place in New Orleans. This is what the right does. Instead of talking about the families, talking about the victims, trying to figure out how we can prevent something like this from happening again, all they want to do is score political points. It's what Donald Trump has done and everybody else.
Well, Gavin Newsom is on the news. You can tell his heart's breaking, and we're going to support them and rebuild. And while he's doing that, Trump is putting out information that he wouldn't give the water from the north, and he wouldn't allow it to go to the south. And what he did was he directed some water to save certain species that would become extinct.
Right.
And who Donald Trump says don't matter. And so that water was not directed to these places, but they ran out of water the first day. There wasn't enough water to put the fires out.
And there were issues with water pressurization. There were other issues as well. And this is unprecedented. It's an unprecedented
And
tragedy.
the suppression helicopters, because it was 100 miles an hour wind, they couldn't get in there.
Helicopters couldn't get up there. You're absolutely right.
So there was no suppression at all.
And raking leaves wouldn't have changed anything. So this didn't start in the woods. It started in a residential area. That's another thing that right-wingers are saying out there. This didn't happen in the forests, okay? It happened in residential areas.
We've all seen California. It's dry as a bone.
Yeah.
When you start getting away from the beach and into the hillside, it's all dry.
But I agree with you. Scott Jennings is a complete douchebag. The far right still lying and coming up with conspiracy theories about these terrorist attacks. And I talked to Ron Filipowski about this. This is Tom Homan on Fox News claiming that both of these incidents in Las Vegas and New Orleans are connected. And then he's pressed on, well, where are you getting this from? And listen to his response.
Just to circle back there, you said earlier, and you just referenced again a terrorist connection there in Las Vegas. The police chief said they haven't identified that. But to your point, you said you believed as this investigation carries out in Las Vegas that I believe you just said you believe they will find a connection. Do you have any other information Or have you been privy to any other information other than what we just directly heard from the police there in Las Vegas?
No, I don't. This is a gut feeling. I've done this for 3.5 decades. I just think there's too many similarities, too much coincidence. I think something down the road they're going to show there's some sort of connection, whether it's this, they got this, whether it's some same network or where they got the tools to pull these terrorist attacks off. I just feel like there's going to be something down the road, and I could be wrong. It's just a gut feeling I have.
Got it. Well, we know that they're going to keep us posted as that investigation continues. And Tom, we appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. See you again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Well, I'll give him this. He definitely has a gut. I don't know if it's a feeling, but he definitely has a gut. Whatever happened to responsibility? Whatever happened to waiting until more information comes out? I'm going to tell you this right now. There will be no correlation, and there will be no direct connection between what took place in Las Vegas and what took place in New Orleans. You don't have to be a scientist. Now, police officers have to say, we're not ruling it out. They're still investigating. This was a guy in Las Vegas that was depressed. This was a guy in Las Vegas that was mentally ill. This was a guy in Las Vegas that just found out that his wife was breaking up with him. He was depressed. Clearly, he was suicidal. It's why he took his own life before the car exploded. Now, why he wanted the car to explode after taking his own life, we don't know. We might never know the answer to that, but this was someone who was suicidal. I don't believe he was trying to kill thousands of innocent people. Now, why he exploded his vehicle is still yet to be determined. There is no direct correlation to this and what took place in New Orleans other than the fact that they soon used the same rental car company, Turo. Who cares? What happened in New Orleans, it appears as though the information that we have learned is that this was a guy who was born in Texas, not a migrant. He served this country, seemed like a fairly intelligent, normal guy. But over the course of the last 6 months to a year, for whatever reason, his business was tanking. He owed a lot of money. He was in a lot of debt. His relationships were tarnished. He wasn't talking to a lot of people. And somehow he was radicalized by ISIS. Now, whether he did that on his own and he was just watching videos or whether people were radicalizing him is something yet to be determined. And if people were radicalizing him, then guess what? They need to be accounted for as well. But it seems like this was a guy who, again, lost it. He was losing his business. He had no money. He was in a lot of debt. His relationships were being tarnished. He threatened the life of his own family. He absolutely lost it. And he decided to go out, rent a truck, and kill as many people as possible in a short period of time. And sadly, one's too many. He killed at least 14. These are both Trump supporters. Let me repeat. They voted for Donald Trump. They are both Trump supporters. Well, Brian, why are you making this political? I wouldn't have made it political, and I wouldn't care who they voted for if the right wasn't lying. That's all they do is lie. This wasn't a migrant. This wasn't George Soros' involvement. This wasn't Joe Biden. This wasn't because of open borders. And these weren't even Democrats. The guy in Vegas was a staunch Donald Trump supporter. How do we know this? Besides voting record. Everybody in his family have said he was a huge Donald Trump supporter. Yes, his ex-wife was not. Who cares what his ex-wife thought? And yes, this guy in New Orleans was a registered Republican who voted for Donald Trump as well. So the migrant stuff was a lie. The stuff that these are liberals or Democrats was a lie. All lies. That's why I point out that these were both MAGA Trump supporters. Now, maybe the guy in New Orleans wasn't a huge MAGA guy, but we know the guy in Vegas was. So stop it with the nonsense. And if they were Democrats or liberals, all you would hear 24/7, oh, look, it's another liberal. Look, it's another Democrat. Just like they lied about January 6th and they said it was a bunch of Antifa liberals and FBI agents dressed up in MAGA outfits. All they do is lie. Trump, or whichever way you want to look at it, crying and grievances and anger in his press conference that took place at Mar-a-Lago today. And this is the point where a reporter asked him about Greenland, and I'm not making this up. He cannot assure the American people in the world that he might not use troops on the ground in Greenland and take it over. Have a listen to this.
Please. President, thank you. Wanted to touch on the world on fire that you mentioned, but let's start, if we could, with your references to Greenland and the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy? And
I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion, more so maybe than the hostages.
There you go. Go after Jimmy Carter the day he's being laid to rest. We just have an incoming president, ladies and gentlemen, who said he can't rule out military action to take over Greenland and the Panama Canal. You cannot make this stuff up. Oh, but it gets worse. Here's when he's asked about January 6th pardons. Are you going to pardon the people that attacked police officers that day?
More than 140 police officers were injured by rioters on January 6th. Will you pardon anyone who attacked a police officer?
Well, you know, the only one that was killed was a beautiful young lady named Ashley Babbitt. She was killed, and there was actually somebody else that was killed, also a MAGA person, but people don't give it 100% credibility. I'm going to find out about it, and we're going to find out. But Ashley Babbitt was killed. She was shot. She had never been shot. She was shot for no reason whatsoever. In fact, they say that she was trying to hold back the crowd, and the crowd was made up of a lot of different people, so we'll see. But I will tell you this, the person that was killed was Ashley Babbitt.
Notice how he doesn't answer the question. Mr. President, Mr. President-elect, whatever you want to call him, orange orangutan. The question wasn't about Ashley Babbitt or who was killed. The question was, are you going to pardon those that are in jail for attacking police officers? Doesn't answer the question, but he does continue to lie, though, about January 6th. He's asked another question about January 6th. Listen to what he says about guns.
Look, you know, there was never charges of insurrection or anything like that. But if there were, this would be the only insurrection in history where people went in as insurrectionists with not one gun. Okay? And let me tell you, the people that you're talking about have a lot of guns in their home for hunting and for shooting and for entertainment, a lot of good reasons. But there wasn't one gun that they found. And why didn't they find the bomber, the pipe bomber? You know, they know who the pipe bomber is.
No, they don't. There's no evidence they do. And you're lying about guns. And this is a lie being put forth by the far right. Henry Tarrio was found with an AR-15. Harlan Bowen, of 48 years old of Colorado, was arrested. He had a Glock 23 handgun and a large capacity magazine. Thomas Gronick of North Carolina had a 9mm handgun as well. Leslie Grimes of Michigan was possession of a large capacity magazine. Christopher Alberts had a 9mm Taurus handgun that held 12 rounds that day. Lonnie Kaufman had an assault-style rifle, a shotgun, and 3 handguns. Grant Moore had a .380, 3-loaded 6-round magazines. Julian Snell, a 40-year-old, was in possession of a large-capacity magazine. All these people were arrested and charged, by the way. Timothy Wolf had a large-capacity magazine. A guy by the name of Cleveland Meredith Jr. had an assault rifle. Sam Fisher of New York was in possession of multiple firearms and was charged. Mark Abraham also was in possession of a deadly and dangerous weapon. Mark Mazza was arrested and charged with carrying a firearm on Capitol grounds as well that day. So I could actually name you even more people. That is a blatant lie that there were no guns. You hear that from the far right all the time. Nobody had a gun. It was an insurrection. And here's Donald Trump now going after Jack Smith, somehow saying that this morning at Mar-a-Lago that Jack Smith is executing people. I'm not making this up. Have a listen.
They brought this moron out of The Hague. He's a mean guy. He's a mean, nasty guy. His picture was perfect because you look at his picture, you say, that's a bad guy with his robe, his purple robe. And he executes people. He shouldn't be allowed to execute people because he'll execute everybody. He's a nut job. But we want all of those cases with him.
Wait, what? Jack Smith is executing people? What the hell is this orange orangutan talking about? And here's the part where he says he wants to change the name of the Gulf of Mexico. Have a listen to this.
50 to 60 trillion dollars worth of assets. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. And Mexico has to stop allowing millions of people to pour into our country. They can stop them.
Yeah, there you go. That's very intelligent. Let's change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to happen. Very logical. And then finally, I mean, I can play, the hour-long press conference if I wanted to. It's so nuts. Here he is once again calling the judge presiding in the liable sexual abuse case crooked. Have a listen to this.
And it took work, but it got me a lot of votes because when explained, I mean, we have a judge in New York who's a very crooked judge. I'm under a gag order. I can't even talk about aspects of the case that are the most vital aspects. I'm under a gag. Do you know that I'm the president-elect of the United States of America? I'm a former very successful president. We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We had borders that were sealed and beautiful. Everything was good. We had no wars. We defeated ISIS. We had no wars. Now I'm going into a world that's burning with Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah. By the way, he said he was going to end the war within 24 hours. Now he says hopefully within 6 months. It's funny how he campaigns on certain things and then all of a sudden changes them. So I've been talking about this the last several days since the attack in New Orleans, the conspiracy theories, right? It seems to me that the MAGA right, they're going after one of the leaders. I believe she's an FBI agent, African-American woman who had said originally that it wasn't a terrorist attack. And then a couple hours later said that it was a terrorist attack. She clarified and said she was wrong. But all the MAGAs out there are having a problem with her, but yet have no problem with Donald Trump going on Truth Social, blaming it on someone who crossed the border, blaming it on migrants, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Newsmax anchors, so many on the right, Don Jr., as you pointed out, tweeting out, blaming it on Joe Biden's border policies. Correct me if I'm wrong. Not one of these people have retracted, and not one of these people have apologized. What do you make of this?
No, you're right. I mean, they all tweeted for hours that it was a migrant who just crossed the border. They were echoing or parroting a Fox report that was false, that was not true. But Fox retracted their report about an hour later. But that did not matter to these people. They just continue to run with it, continue to post. The only person who deleted their tweet falsely claiming that this was a migrant
Schmidt, right?
was a Newsmax host,
Right.
Rob Schmidt, right?
Right.
But he did not apologize, and he thought he got away with deleting it because he deleted it pretty quick. However, I happened to screenshot it 1 minute after he posted it, so that's the only reason why he got busted. But some of those guys were deleting tweets, and most of them haven't, because that's what they do. They just constantly, it's a fire hose of lies. And then when you make a mistake or you say something wrong, like this spokesperson did, she made a mistake. She just used bad phrasing, right? And they jump all over that, and they built an entire narrative about how, since she was black, that the whole FBI office in New Orleans is just all about affirmative action, DEI. They hired too many black people, and this shows how incompetent they are because she misspoke, and that's why this terrorist attack happened.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And Libs of TikTok, I think you had retweeted them yesterday, and I saw Libs of TikTok, which is a joke of a Twitter account, was blaming that, as you just mentioned, on DEI hires within the FBI. So first, their lies about this is a migrant and this is an illegal and it's Joe Biden open border policies. When that doesn't work, then they want to blame black people. It's just ridiculous.
Then they go to the black people, and then they go to other things. I mean, they had about 5 different conspiracies. They went to the beer cooler guys, because once it was debunked that the first guy was American citizen, then they were pointing out all these people that were opening up different containers in the area, and they were saying, oh, they were people of color. And they were like, oh, maybe those were migrant co-conspirators. They're acting suspicious. And even Fox reporting that there were some suspicious people in the area that were opening lids to containers. They were people looking for beer. They were going in beer coolers. So,
Yeah,
that was the third conspiracy.
They're endless conspiracies.
And of course, there's a conspiracy too that the guy in Vegas was connected to the guy in New Orleans.
Correct.
They have no connection whatsoever.
On a side note, what do you make of the applause that was given in the House chambers when it was announced that Matt Gaetz will not be returning?
I can give you some news on that because right after that first vote, I jumped over and saw, because I saw Matt Gaetz was got up on Charlie Kirk's show. So I hopped over there to see what they were talking about. And what they were talking about was, and this is before the two guys switched their votes. This was like 10 minutes before that happened. And what Gaetz said is like, I have my certificate of election. I could have showed up to vote today. And he said, I had a contingency plan. I had a plane ticket. And I talked to Mike Johnson last night. And he said, if Mike Johnson had asked me to go, I would have showed up today, cast my vote for Johnson, and then resigned. However, Johnson assured me that he had the votes and didn't need me. So that was somewhat interesting little nugget right there, that Gaetz was prepared to go today. Now, obviously, that could have blown up in their face if he didn't have the votes. But,
can you imagine if that happened?
But by the way, Charlie Kirk responded, said, look, I don't know what to tell you, Gaetz, because 99% of the emails we've gotten, and we've gotten thousands of them, everyone hates Mike Johnson in the MAGA movement. So this is going to, just because he won today, this is going to be a very bumpy ride for this guy.
Oh, it's not going to.
There's a lot of Republicans that don't like him.
I agree. I think it's going to be very bumpy. With that said, what did you make of the appearance of Matt Gaetz last night on television? You had mentioned that he looked like a Wayne Newton, or maybe even a Catwoman for that matter. What do you make of his appearance? What I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah, I saw a few media outlets embedded my tweet in their story comparing him to Wayne Newton.
Right.
I guess what they're saying is it was the makeup job. I mean, I thought he went in for another Botox. I mean, I don't know who's, of course, this is OAN, and this is his first night. This is a big night, right? His first big night as an OAN anchor. So in the span of like 24 hours on his first day on the job, he shows up with just a horrendous makeup job or Botox job or whatever. Again, we saw this again when he spoke at the Republican National Convention.
Right, I was just going to say that.
Look going on.
Yeah.
Then he talks about Fauci declaring martial law and spells martial wrong twice. Then he, then he almost blew the Speaker Johnson vote by not showing up because they thought it was in the bag, and it wasn't. At least it wasn't initially. So, yeah, he's having a hell of a first day. What that shows is like when you're in. Keep in mind, his whole life he's only been an elected official. He was like a lawyer for a couple of years. So they're surrounded by support staff and people that help you and feed you stuff. So he doesn't really have that anymore. He's kind of on his own. And now we're seeing like what a screw up he is.
And as you pointed out on social media, this was Donald Trump's #1 pick for AG. It is mesmerizing, but I guess at this point, not surprising. Because as you know, Jimmy Carter's funeral was yesterday. I thought Joe Biden's speech was so fantastic and beautiful. I also thought it was really funny that nobody wanted to shake Donald Trump's hand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the only people that shook his hand because they almost felt obligated to was Al Gore and Mike Pence. Mike Pence's wife wouldn't even look at him, wanted nothing to do with him. Everybody else, George W. Bush walked right past Donald Trump, refused to shake his hand. Even George W. Bush gets along with Barack Obama, gave him like a slap on the chest. Hey, what's going on? Everybody was shaking everybody's hands there. Everybody, except for Donald Trump. And then you have that horrible, horrific human being, Melania Trump, who's just sitting there in the corner looking like she's miserable and she doesn't want to be there. I can't blame her for not wanting to be sitting next to Donald Trump. But how about show some respect and decency and shake the hands, put your hand out and be gracious, even if you don't like people? I believe that's why Mike Pence did that. Now, if I was Mike Pence, I wouldn't have. His wife certainly didn't want any part of him. So Barack Obama, being the decent human being that he was, exchanged a few pleasantries. Even though he didn't shake the hand of Donald Trump, he was forced to sit next to him. And he exchanged a few pleasantries with him. Because Barack Obama has class. And I want you to listen to what the guy who wears the Donald Trump knee pads 24/7, the guy with zero credibility, the 4-foot-tall coward, Markwayne Mullin, had to say about that interaction. It's mesmerizing. Have a listen to this.
About a redemption story, right? I mean, the greatest political comeback of all times. And what you see right there is Barack Obama realizing it and realize that he kind of probably should kiss a ring, because President Trump is the most popular man in the world and probably the most popular man in our lifetime around the world. And everybody recognizes that now. And the president sets in President Trump is sitting in a good spot, and he's very relaxed. I mean, I've seen a completely different side of him since November 6th, that he's very relaxed, very happy, and is willing to just kind of put bygones behind him and move forward.
Okay, so first of all, Donald Trump is not the most popular man in this country, and he's not the most popular person in the world. Less than half the people that voted for him. Yes, he won the popular vote, but he's not the most popular person even in this country, when almost half the people that voted can't stand him and voted against him. That's number one. Number two, the idea that Barack Obama is kissing the ring because he didn't ignore Trump and he exchanged a few words with him is probably the dumbest take I've ever heard in my life. Let me be very clear. The people that are kissing Donald Trump's ring are the people like Markwayne Mullin and the people that said he was incompetent, the J.D. Vances of the world who compared Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. Those are the people that are kissing the ring. MAGA Republicans and Republicans in general that know exactly who Donald Trump is are the ones that are kissing the rings, the ones that have no backbones, the Kevin McCarthys of the world, the ones that spoke out against Donald Trump and said he was unfit for office, the Ted Cruzes of the world. Those are the ones that are kissing the ring. The idea that Barack Obama exchanged a few words with Donald Trump at the funeral of Jimmy Carter means that he's kissing the ring of Donald Trump might be certainly the dumbest take so far in 2025. I'm sure we'll have plenty more. Markwayne Mullin is a complete imbecile. And even as much as he hates Matt Gaetz, which I agree with him and I understand why, Markwayne Mullin can't stand Matt Gaetz. He still defended Matt Gaetz when he found out Donald Trump wanted him to be the attorney general. So if there's anybody that's kissing the ring and has no backbone and wears the Donald Trump knee pads 24/7, it's Markwayne Mullin and so many of these other MAGA morons within the party. Speaking of MAGA morons, let's talk a little bit about Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg stayed pretty silent in going after Joe Biden or Democrats for the last 4 years. He's very silent. And then all of a sudden, a week ago, he donated $1 million, which is pennies to us, to Donald Trump. Why did he do that? Well, he did that because, in a way, it's a smaller version of a copycat system of Elon Musk. He did that because he knows it's beneficial for him and his company if he takes the side of Donald Trump. Because Mark Zuckerberg has no backbone either. He only cares about his bottom line. He only cares about how much money Facebook makes and his investors. Very similar to Elon Musk, maybe just not on a big a scale as what Elon Musk has done. So he donates $1 million. Then he shows up on Joe Rogan's show yesterday. Why is he all of a sudden doing Joe Rogan's show? Well, so he can trash Joe Biden because he knows he has a listener of one in Donald Trump. Have a listen to this.
So at the beginning, it kind of seemed like, okay, we should give a little bit of deference to the government and the health authorities on how we should play this. But when it went from, 2 weeks to flatten the curve to, and like in the beginning, it was like, okay, there aren't enough masks. Masks aren't that important. To then it's like, oh no, you have to wear a mask. And, everything was shifting around. It just became very difficult to kind of follow. And this really hit the most extreme, I'd say, during the Biden administration when they were trying to roll out the vaccine program. And I'm generally pretty pro rolling out vaccines. I think on balance, the vaccines are more positive than negative. But I think that while they're trying to push that program, they also tried to censor anyone who is basically arguing against it. And they pushed us super hard to take down things that were honestly true, right? I mean, they basically pushed us and said, you know, anything that says that vaccines might have side effects, you basically need to take down. And I was just like, well, we're not going to do that. Like, we're clearly not going to do that. I mean, that is kind of inarguably true.
Who is they? Who's telling you to take down things that
it was
that talk about vaccine side effects?
It was people in the Biden administration.
People in the Biden administration. Are you going to give us a name? I find it interesting, Mark, that after you donate $1 million to Donald Trump and he's a week outside of getting back into office, now all of a sudden you want to criticize the Biden administration. Okay. Do you have any emails? If somebody in the Biden administration, as you claim, which I don't believe, was forcing you to take stuff down or threatening you or whatever term you want to use, why didn't you record any of those conversations? You're Mark Zuckerberg. Clearly you have the technology to do that. Why all of a sudden now are you sharing this? And when you say people, that doesn't really narrow it down. Oh, well, there were people in the administration. Who? Give us a name of somebody in the Biden administration that put that pressure on you. But Mark Zuckerberg didn't do that. He doesn't have any emails to prove that. He doesn't have any phone calls because apparently he didn't record any of the calls, and he doesn't have any names. All we have is Mark Zuckerberg's word. Now, everybody on the far right didn't care what Mark Zuckerberg had to say for years. Now, all of a sudden on social media, they're posting this clip, and all of a sudden now they believe Mark Zuckerberg. Let me be very clear on this. Mark Zuckerberg is a liar. I don't believe him. Is it possible that people made some good points within our government and said, hey, this is misinformation, ivermectin doesn't do this, this is that information, we recommend that you don't put that. That's possible. I'm not going to deny that. But when he talks about all these Biden officials that put all this pressure on him to censor people, where is the evidence? Oh, well, I had a phone call. Oh, really? Joe Rogan actually asks a really good question. Doesn't press him on it, of course, as I would, but he says, who was putting this pressure on you? Oh, just people in the Biden administration. What people? Give me a name. Who were they talking to? Did you record any of the phone calls? Do you have any of the emails? Of course he doesn't, because he's lying. Now, you might be saying, Brian, why would he lie? Because he knows Donald Trump is in office the next 4 years, and if there's anybody that can hurt Facebook in his bottom line, it's Donald Trump. So he wants to play nice to Donald Trump, just like Jeff Bezos, who has been attacking Donald Trump for years, and now all of a sudden he wants to play nice with him. I guarantee you this interview doesn't happen if Donald Trump wasn't reelected. Never happens. If Donald Trump wasn't reelected, Bezos doesn't cover his bases and doesn't play nice with Trump. Certainly Mark Zuckerberg doesn't. These people are liars. All they care about is their company and their investors and their bottom line. Bow to the king. They don't care about anybody else. It's so obvious to me, but now all of a sudden everybody on the right, they believe Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, Mark, show me the proof. Show me the proof. Now, if Donald Trump loves what you're saying, show me the proof. Who did you speak with in the Biden administration? You didn't record any of these phone calls? You would think if somebody in the government, or in this case, allegedly, somebody in Joe Biden's administration was pressuring you unwarranted, that maybe you would record some of these conversations. Why doesn't Mark have any names? Why didn't he record any of the conversations? Because it's unprovable. He's never going to give out that information. He shows up on Joe Rogan's show for one reason and one reason only, to bash the Biden administration so that Donald Trump, he's seen in good light when it comes to Donald Trump. It's a joke. It's ridiculous. Mark Zuckerberg is a lying piece of turd. That's what he is. And the fact that his wife is actually, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, in the medical field makes this even more embarrassing. So there's video that's been circulating online. And obviously this mother is in desperation, and my heart goes out to her and her daughter. Their home was destroyed. And it's terrible, and my heart goes out to her, and I'm understandable that she is very emotional. But Gavin Newsom is trying to do everything he can at this point. Some might say it's not enough. Okay, fine. So this woman confronts him, and I want you to listen to this interaction. Here we go.
Governor, you got a second? Governor, I live here, Governor. That was my daughter's school, Governor. Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call?
I
Because
can't-
I
it
don't
doesn't-
believe it.
I'm sorry. There's literally, I've tried 5 times. That's why I'm walking around to make the
Why
call.
is the president not taking your call?
Because it's not going through. So
Why?
I have to get cell service.
So
There's
let's
no
get
cell
it.
service.
Let's get it. I want to be here when you call the president.
I appreciate it. I'm doing that right now. And it's to immediately get reimbursements, individual assistance, and to help you. I'm devastated. I'm so sorry, especially for your daughter. I have 4 kids. Losing the school.
Everyone who went to school there, they lost their homes. They lost 2 homes because they were living in one and building another. Governor, please tell me, what are you going to do with the president right now?
We're getting the resources to help rebuild. We're getting
Why
the
was there no
resources to do
water
it.
in the hydrants,
That's all
Governor?
that's all literally.
Is it going to be different next time?
It has to be. Has
Right.
to be. Of course.
What are you going to do?
I'm doing
To fill
everything
the
I can.
hydrants. I would fill them up personally, you know that. I would fill up the hydrants myself. But would you do that?
I would do whatever I can.
But you're not. I see do you know there's water dripping over there, Governor? There's water coming out there. You can use it.
I appreciate it. I'm going to make the call to address everything I can right now, including making sure people
I'd
are
like
safe.
to make sure you do. Can I have an opportunity to at least tell people you're doing what you're saying you're doing? Could somebody have a contact? Can I have your contact information?
Right there.
So Gavin Newsom handled that about as well as you could. And I am also very understandable that this woman is going through a lot. And sometimes when you're going through a lot and you're emotional, maybe you don't react or respond in the way that you normally would. I'm very understanding of that. However, very ignorant comments that she made. First of all, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people have been displaced. That doesn't mean you have the right to listen to a private conversation between the governor and the president of the United States, unless it's a press conference. So that was a stupid statement, number one. Why should you be able to listen to that conversation? Number two, she said, I don't believe it. You think the governor's lying to you? He's not trying to get in touch with the president? Why is the president not taking your call? How many times did the governor say in that conversation, I don't have cell service? In the video, he literally shows her his phone that he's trying to contact the president. Why would she say, I don't believe you? Again, very stupid thing to say. He's literally trying to contact the president of the United States while she's telling him, I don't believe you, and I want to fill up water hydrants. Very ignorant. I understand she's emotional. I feel for her. She just lost her home. Maybe she's not acting rationally. Maybe she's not behaving the way she normally would. Understandable. I get that. She still said a lot of things in that conversation that are stupid. What do you want the governor to do now? Now, we can talk Monday morning quarterback and say this should have been done, that should have been done. He's doing everything he can right now. Helicopters and planes, 24/7. They couldn't do that when there were 100-mile-per-hour winds, but people don't seem to understand that. The hydrants. We've had calls coming into the show. They ran out of water. That is not necessarily true, and people have been saying that in press conferences. There's a lot of factors for why there wasn't water in some of those hydrants. There's multiple reasons why, and people have talked about that. Professionals. Correct. Somebody on social media said pressure. That is also correct. Now, listen, that's unacceptable. Got to make sure that doesn't happen again. I agree. Let's criticize the people who are responsible for that. But it wasn't because they ran out of water. They had enough water 2 feet deep, 2 football fields. It's very difficult. Very difficult. And the conditions have been horrid. They've been terrible. Is it possible that arson might have also played a factor? Certainly possible. Let the investigations run itself, and then we'll make that assessment. But having someone in the street run up to the governor and say, hey, I want to listen to the call between you and the president is stupid. It's not going to happen, and it's a dumb request. Okay? It's a dumb request. Oh, governor, I don't believe you. Fine, then don't believe him. Get out of the way and let him do his business. Get out of the way, because you're not helping the situation any. Holy smokes. That's what, and I don't know what her political affiliation is. As I said, I feel for her. But that's what these MAGA morons do. All of a sudden, they're weather experts, they're meteorologists, they're transgender experts. They're experts on the psyche of someone who is a homosexual, apparently. They're experts when it comes to firefighting and attacking blazes. They're infectious disease experts. I mean, these people have no credibility.